So imagine you're at the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
You've got this cart just completely full of food. There's this, incredibly long line of impatient people right behind you.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Yeah, exactly. And you swipe your card, and it gets declined.
Oh, man. Just instant dread.
Right. You feel that immediate hot flash of panic. You're scrambling, checking your banking app. Your heart rate is just spiking. And suddenly you look down, and your 9-year-old child looks up at you and just asks, "Are we poor?"
Hmm. It is the ultimate deer in the headlights moment. I mean, truly.
It really is. And how you answer that specific question in the next 10 seconds will literally shape their financial psychology for, well, the rest of their life.
No pressure. Right.
Exactly. No pressure at all. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we are getting into a source document that is essentially a survival guide for those exact moments. We are looking at a fascinating guide titled The Value of Wealth Across Childhood Ages.
And on the surface, I mean, this looks like a straightforward parenting cheat sheet, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It gives very specific scripts for how to talk about money with a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-year-old.
But the reason we are really analyzing this today is because it's actually a mirror. By breaking down the specific, calculated psychology of what we're supposed to tell kids at these different stages of cognitive development.
It reveals something totally different.
Yes, exactly. It reveals something incredibly profound about adult relationships with wealth. It forces us to ask, why do people care about money at all?
So we're going to unpack those 3 distinct ages today. And I want to warn you, trying to explain the concept of money to a young child absolutely exposes how well or how poorly you actually understand it yourself.
Oh, it really does. It strips away all the jargon.
Right. So let's look at the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
The 3-year-old. According to the source, at 3 years old, a child's concept of the world prompts a very straightforward question. They simply ask, what is money for?
And notice the pure utility of that question. There is no emotional baggage attached to it yet. None at all.
None. Okay, let's unpack this parent voice response that the guide gives. The adult is instructed to say, money helps people buy things they need, like food, homes, and clothes.
Which is so refreshingly simple.
It is. And then the guide provides this tiny critical piece of behind-the-scenes instruction for the adult. It just says, very concrete.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that those 2 words dictate the entire psychological strategy for this age.
Because they can't handle anything else, right?
Exactly. At 3 years old, human cognitive development is entirely grounded in the physical world. Developmental psychologists refer to this as a highly egocentric phase where abstract reasoning simply does not exist yet.
So if they can't touch it, it doesn't matter.
Right. If a child cannot touch an object, taste it, or physically inhabit it, it doesn't map onto their reality at all.
So if you try to be this super responsible adult and say, well, money is for your college fund, or money is how we build long-term interests.
They are hearing absolute gibberish.
Total gibberish. It's like explaining the weather to a toddler. You don't sit there and map out barometric pressure and cold fronts. You just say, rain makes the flowers grow.
That is a perfect analogy. The parent's scripted response here deliberately strips away all the invisible mechanics of the global economy. By answering with food, homes, and clothes, wealth is strictly defined as a tangible tool for basic survival.
Just keeping it super grounded.
Yeah, it lays a psychological foundation of physical security, and importantly, it avoids introducing desire.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice that. It doesn't say money buys toys.
Exactly. It doesn't say money buys candy or toys. Wealth just equals a warm coat and a roof.
If you pause and really think about it, that is an incredibly liberating way to view your finances.
It really is.
Because we spend so much of our adult lives layering money with status and ego and just complex anxiety. It becomes this tangled web of self-worth.
Totally. It becomes about who we are.
Right. But at its most fundamental, concrete level, before all that cultural noise gets in there, it really is just a mechanism for acquiring apples and shelter.
And that neutralizes the moral charge we put on wealth. At age 3, a dollar bill isn't inherently good or evil. It doesn't mean you're, successful or failing. It is purely functional.
But of course, that period of innocent, concrete understanding has a very short shelf life.
Very short, unfortunately.
Because the 3-year-old's bubble eventually pops. As soon as the child starts preschool or kindergarten, their physical world expands into a social world.
Right. They aren't just looking at the food on their own plate anymore.
Exactly. They're looking at the toys their classmates brought to show and tell. The focus shifts away from basic survival and moves straight towards social dynamics.
And that triggers a fundamental cognitive shift. They stop observing what money is and they begin to question why it matters to the people around them.
Which moves us into the second stage of our source guide, age 6.
This is where it gets a bit trickier.
It does. The child's question matures. They no longer ask, what is money for? Now they ask, why is money important?
A very different question.
Very. And the scripted response for the adult is, people use money to take care of themselves and their families. But here is the crucial instruction provided alongside this script. It says, avoid making money feel scary or magical.
Which is easily the most vital piece of psychological guidance in the entire text. I mean, at 6 years old, children are in their peak phase of imaginative play.
They're basically living in a fantasy world half the time.
Exactly. Their brains are actively constructing narratives to explain phenomena they don't fully grasp. The line separating reality from fantasy is incredibly porous.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little bit. I'm struggling to see how a metal coin or like a digital banking app becomes scary or magical to a kid. I mean, where does that fantastical element actually come from?
Well, it comes from observation without context.
Okay, how so?
Think about the child's perspective of a modern transaction, right? They watch you walk up to a glowing terminal at a store, you tap a little plastic card, the machine beeps, and suddenly you are handed a bag full of expensive items.
Right, I didn't actually hand anyone any cash.
Exactly. You didn't physically trade anything of obvious value, you just tapped a card. So to a 6-year-old brain, that card functions exactly like a magic wand. It literally conjures resources out of thin air.
I never thought about a credit card as a magic wand before. But yeah, to a kid, it looks like an infinite resource.
And the danger there is it implies that wealth requires no labor, no finite limits, and no consequence. That is the magical distortion.
Okay, so that's the magic. What about the scary part?
On the flip side, the scary distortion happens when parents project ambient tension.
Like stressing out over bills.
Right. If a child overhears hushed, intense arguments at the kitchen table over a stack of envelopes, or, if an adult snaps at them in the toy aisle, yelling that something is too expensive with this palpable anxiety.
The kid doesn't know what inflation is.
Exactly. The child doesn't understand inflation or debt-to-income ratios. They just see this invisible, terrifying concept called bills, making the two most powerful people in their world, their parents, angry and afraid.
So the concept of money literally becomes the monster hiding under the bed.
Precisely. Therefore, the source script, people use money to take care of themselves and their families, is a calculated move to neutralize both the magic and the fear.
Because it anchors this highly abstract concept into a reassuring relational framework.
Yes. It tells the 6-year-old, look, this is not a magic wand that grants unlimited wishes, and it is not a monster that threatens our safety. It is merely a tool we use to look after each other.
That is profound. And honestly, it forces a deeply uncomfortable question for us.
Which is?
How many of us, as fully grown adults, are still walking around treating money as either magical or scary?
Oh, a huge amount. I mean, behavioral economics shows us that a shocking percentage of the adult population is trapped in those exact 6-year-old cognitive distortions.
We absolutely treat it magically when we rely on a sudden windfall to fix our problems. Like buying lottery tickets as a retirement strategy, or dumping savings into a highly volatile meme stock, hoping it magically multiplies overnight.
We're just tapping that credit card, hoping the machine keeps beeping.
Exactly. And on the scary side, I mean, how many people literally refuse to open their mail or delete their banking apps off their phone because looking at their actual debt is just too terrifying?
We actually call that the financial ostrich effect.
Because you're burying your head in the sand.
Right. When the brain encounters information that causes acute psychological stress, the automatic defense mechanism is avoidance. If you don't actively demystify wealth for yourself, if you don't train your brain to view it purely as an administrative tool for taking care of your responsibilities, you remain a victim of that childhood fantasy and fear.
It is wild that the recommended psychology for a first grader is essentially the blueprint for adult financial therapy.
It really is.
But, as the guide points out, you can't protect a child from the realities of the world forever. The illusion eventually shatters.
Because children grow into emotional sponges.
Right.
By the time they approach double digits, their observation skills are incredibly sharp.
They miss nothing.
Nothing. They become highly attuned to adult emotional states.
Which brings us to the third and final stage in the guide, age 9.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the questions aren't cute anymore. The 9-year-old asks, Why do adults worry about money?
Notice the massive leap in vocabulary and awareness there.
It's huge.
At age 3, the focus was the object itself. What is it? At age 6, the focus was the function. Why is it important? But at 9, the child is directly interrogating the emotional toll that wealth takes on the adults around them. They are naming the anxiety.
They're calling it out. And the guide provides this script to answer that really heavy question. The adult should say, money affects safety, choices, and opportunities in life. That's why adults often think carefully about it.
And the underlying instruction provided to the parent here is actually a warning.
Right. It says, children notice financial stress surprisingly early.
And they absolutely do. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as emotional contagion.
Emotional contagion.
Yeah.
Meaning they just absorb it.
Yeah. Humans are neurologically wired to detect and mirror the cortisol levels and stress responses of the people around them. Parents often believe they are successfully shielding their children from financial hardship by having those serious conversations behind closed doors.
But a 9-year-old reads microexpressions.
Exactly. They notice when you stare blankly at your phone. They feel the tension in your posture when you say no to an outing. They pick up the frequency of scarcity.
It's like they're these silent, spinning radar dishes, just constantly mapping the invisible emotional weather of the household.
That's exactly what they're doing.
So when they finally call it out and ask about the worry, how do you validate that incredibly sharp observation without just dumping a mountain of adult burdens onto a kid?
This raises an important question, and the answer is you utilize cognitive framing. Look closely at the pivot in that scripted response.
Okay.
The child uses the word worry, but the adult is instructed not to repeat that word. The adult reframes it, stating that adults think carefully about money.
Wow, that is such a deliberate choice of words. What is the psychological difference there between worrying and thinking carefully?
Worry implies helplessness. It describes a passive state of anxiety where external forces are happening to you. It basically tells the child that the adults are out of control.
And nobody wants to tell their kid they're out of control.
Exactly. Thinking carefully, on the other hand, implies agency, strategy, and responsibility. It validates the child's observation like, yes, you are sensing that I am putting a lot of intense mental effort into this, but it frames that effort as a deliberate, responsible action rather than uncontrolled panic.
So you are acknowledging the weight of the situation, but you are refusing to pass the panic down the line. You are modeling control.
Precisely. And beyond the framing of the emotion, look at the actual concepts the adult is introducing. Safety, choices, and opportunities.
Yeah, we are light years away from food, homes, and clothes at this point.
We have fully transitioned from the concrete to the abstract. At age 9, the child is being invited to understand the ultimate reality of wealth.
Which is?
That money is no longer just about acquiring physical items to survive the day. Money is the currency of options. It dictates the trajectory of your life.
Choices and opportunities basically translate to autonomy.
Exactly.
It means freedom. And the harsh reality the 9-year-old is beginning to face is that a lack of money means a restriction of those options.
It is the exact moment they realize that wealth acts as an invisible architecture that defines what a person can or cannot do in the world. Managing it requires careful thought because the stakes are so incredibly high.
This guide really is a masterclass in behavioral psychology. I mean, when you look at the warning that children notice financial stress surprisingly early, it really demands self-reflection.
It absolutely does.
Because if a 9-year-old can detect the subtle frequency of your financial anxiety, the adults around you are definitely feeling it. Your partner, your coworkers, your friends. We project our relationship with money constantly.
Right. It forces an audit of our own behavior. Are you worrying out loud, constantly complaining about prices and radiating a scarcity mindset? Or are you modeling what it looks like to think carefully about your safety and your choices?
It is the difference between letting your finances manage you and actively managing your finances.
Well said.
When we pull back and look at the entire arc of this document, the progression is fascinating.
Yeah, we essentially tracked a complete developmental journey.
Right.
It starts with the 3-year-old, grounding the concept of wealth strictly in concrete physical needs. It secures the baseline of survival without attaching any moral baggage or status to the dollar.
And keep it simple. Food, homes, clothes.
Exactly. Then we mature to the 6-year-old. This is the critical stage of defining relational responsibility. And most importantly, it involves actively demystifying the extremes of fear and magic.
Stopping the imagination from turning money into a terrifying monster, or an infinite magic wand.
Yes. It's the ultimate reminder that a credit card isn't magic and a bill isn't a monster. It's just a tool for taking care of the family.
And then we reach the 9-year-old.
Right. Grasping the highly abstract reality that money dictates our autonomy in the world, it is the massive shift toward emotional regulation learning to transmute the raw, passive emotion of worry into the productive, strategic action of thinking carefully about our choices and opportunities.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over because we've spent this entire deep dive looking at a source material explicitly designed as a roadmap for childhood development.
Right. It tells us how kids grow up.
But consider this.
Hmm.
What if those 3 chronological ages aren't just about childhood? What if they are the exact psychological blueprint for adult financial peace of mind?
The stages map perfectly onto adult financial literacy.
They really do. Think about what it takes to actually feel secure in your wealth today. First, you have to conquer the 3-year-old stage, right? You must be able to clearly separate your concrete survival needs from your emotional desires, stripping away the cultural obsession with status.
That's step one.
Step 2, you have to conquer the 6-year-old stage. You have to stop hoping for magical lottery wins and stop hiding from the scary reality of your bank statements. You have to demystify the tool.
You can't put your head in the sand. And finally, you must conquer the 9-year-old stage.
Exactly. You have to stop being a passive victim of financial worry and start acting like an architect who thinks carefully about using wealth to buy freedom, choices, and opportunities.
We all have to grow up financially, regardless of how old we are on paper.
So the next time you feel that spike of panic, whether your card gets declined at the grocery store or you're looking at a retirement projection, ask yourself, which cognitive stage am I stuck in right now? Am I reacting like the 3-year-old, the 6-year-old, or the 9-year-old?
Because recognizing the distortion is the first step toward reclaiming your options.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration helps you examine the invisible psychology behind the everyday transactions we all take for granted. Keep questioning the why behind the money in your pocket, and until next time, keep diving deep.